Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Creative Sustainability Session and Actors Roundtable. My name is Emily Best. I'm the founder and CEO of Seed&Spark. We're an organization that helps shift power to communities through creativity. We do it through crowdfunding, through streaming, through community events, and through corporate workplace inclusion programs that are built around film. These creative sustainability sessions are an online version of something that we had been doing as day-long summits in cities all across the country. It started as an initiative, a collaborative between us and Erica Alexander and also Mark Duplass. And now they're really, with the virtual environment, it's really a chance for us to reach out to people we might not be able to get in the same city at one time, to talk about how, as artists, we stay inspired, how we navigate our journeys, and how we keep going when it's really tough. I'm looking at this, I'm like, boy, I should have done something. I'm about to be on with 4 of the most gorgeous humans you'll ever see in your life. I could have done better, but nobody's here for me anyway. I am coming to you from Sacramento, California, which is unceded Nisenan territory. If you would like to learn about the land that you're on, particularly if you're in the US or Canada, you can download nativeland.ca. It's an app on your phone, and you pop it up and you give it permission to know where you are, and it will tell you the indigenous land that you're currently occupying. I think it's important to make this acknowledgement, as our indigenous communities are hardest hit by COVID. And there's in the comments, there's an opportunity for you to donate to that COVID relief if you are able. I'm very, very excited about this panel today. It's full of people I really love personally and professionally, and who I deeply respect. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Raul Castillo, Nana Mensah, Janina Gavankar, and Jake Choi. I did it. Hey, Raul, nice hair.
Thanks.
Hey, y'all.
How are you?
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Emily, I love your hair.
Middling.
Yeah,
At best.
That's amazing.
Thanks. People have been like, oh, I love your hair. And I'm like, cool. This is not ever a good indication. If you talk to a woman who's just dramatically changed her hair, you should check if she's okay. This is pandemic panic is what this is. Pandemic manic panic, actually, to be specific.
Right. You remind me of Sakura from this anime called Naruto. She's the female. Yeah. You remind me of her.
Thank you. That's an incredible compliment.
Yeah, I love Sakura. So
that's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I want to kick off actually sort of introductorily, because you guys have such an amazing body of work, and you come to us with fan bases from all over. And so I imagine that people who are here today may not be 100% familiar with everyone else's work. So I actually want to go around and start. Raul, can you just tell us where are you from and how did you get started?
I'm from a town called McAllen, Texas, in the southern tip of Texas. And I've been in New York City for, I think it'll be 18 years this year. I came up in theater. I went to Boston University, studied playwriting, and I kind of made my way into independent cinema, and then found my way into TV and that sort of thing.
Your very pivotal role, though, that changed your career was in a small play called References to Salvador Dali.
That changed it all. After that, it was,
the first play I ever produced in New York City, we cast Raul Castillo in the lead. And as a producer, I remember after his audition being like, oh, that's what the audition looks like when you're like, that's the one. We all look at each other and we're like, well, duh, right? Duh. Really, I remember that so clearly. No, we were having to negotiate your haircut with the other play you were in with very famous people at that time.
Right.
That's what I remember.
Right, because I was playing a military man.
That's right. That's wonderful. Okay, so hailing from Texas. Nana, how about you?
My name is Nana Mensah. I grew up in Connecticut. I'm Ghanaian American. I came at this, I guess, through theater. And then I was very wonderfully cast in this web series on YouTube called An African City. And that was kind of like a big kind of jump off point for me. And then, but I've always lived in New York and have been doing the theater thing. And I think so it's like a multi-pronged approach. Like one, like I got this really lovely, amazing fan base from An African City, and then I also was doing theater simultaneously. So I feel like the people who like know about me and love me are either like, you know, septuagenarian Jewish people or like 20-something African girls. Like that's it. That's it. So,
that's wide appeal.
Yeah, that's right. I got out the middle part, but I got the two. You know, yeah.
Well, and you're currently appearing on New Amsterdam, right?
Yeah, so I play Dr. Camila Candelario in NBC's New Amsterdam. That's the most recent hustle.
I really appreciate your behind the scenes like Instagram photos, because that commercial comes on all the time. My husband and I are avid watchers of competitive dance shows such as World of Dance. So we see a lot of advertisements for that show. It's really fun to get a peek behind the scenes. Jake, how about you? Where do you hail from?
Queens, New York. Oh, sorry, hold on. Queens, New York. Born and raised in New York. I actually did like school plays as a kid, and at one point I just wanted to run around and just like hit people and play sports. So I kind of quit that. I played basketball my whole life. I went overseas for it, and I quit basketball when I was overseas, and I started taking acting classes again when I was overseas in South Korea, and the class was just filled with these outcasts of people who didn't want to assimilate to society and just kind of like go to school and get a 9 to 5. They wanted to act. They wanted to be on stage and, be in front of the camera. And I felt like, oh, okay, my 4 years in Korea, I finally feel accepted. I finally feel like I'm with my, what do you call it? Like a chosen family. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was. And for a few months I was there, just learning just the foundations of like acting on stage and camera. And I came back to New York and I wanted to continue. So I signed up for classes at Strasbourg in Union Square. And like Raul and Nana, I started, in the theater, just doing small plays and just performing wherever I could. I mean, one of the most fun times I ever had was doing this like small play in the basement of this Moroccan restaurant in Hell's Kitchen. And it was great, and slowly just started working on bigger stuff, and kind of started taking classes for on camera after a few years, because that's a whole different thing. And yeah, now I'm in LA.
The sexiest thing I have ever directed, Jake was in.
Oh boy!
I was going to go ahead and say that out loud. Jake was in a web series that I produced and did some writing and directing called Fuck Yes, which were they're digital shorts about sexual consent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so sexy.
It was super sexy. So you can, I'll put the link in so you guys can watch it at some point. And Janina, how about you? Where do you live?
I'm from Joliet, Illinois, which is 45 minutes southwest of Chicago. And I grew up as a musician, a pretty serious classical musician. So I studied piano and classical voice and orchestral percussion. I was like 13, head of drumline, taking it entirely too seriously. This is like, I was that kind of like militant musician little kid who was like, I have to get it perfect. So I was that kid. And then I was in a musical in high school. I was just doing the musicals because I was studying voice, and it was Maria and West Side Story, every brown girl's dream. And I had like an out of body emotional experience in a rehearsal and was like, what was that? And then started taking theater seriously. And then I got to college. I thought I was going to be a percussion performance major. So I was sort of like looking at schools for that. And then I found like a not so fancy school, much to my parents' dismay, and was like, I have Indian parents, what do you expect? And but they were like, you can do anything you want. Like, do you want to be in the jazz band? You want to be in the play? Well, you want to put on a play? What do you want? What do you want to do? And I was like, yes, great. So I ended up a theater performance major and a dual minor in music and in psych. And the psych stuff is what I use the most now, which is funny. And I think everybody here will probably agree, like what we do is really just like diagnose characters and then start, you know, it's a way to work inside out, right? And then I sort of started working in Chicago in theater and doing a ton of commercials. And then I moved to Los Angeles. And my first series was The L Word. Yeah. And then, I've been lucky to just keep working since.
Something that occurs to me that I didn't do on purpose, but I love this. We have 2 New York-based actors and 2 LA-based actors here. And I want to know, what was the moment that you said, I'm going to move and do this thing? And did you do it at the right time, looking back?
Ooh, such a good question.
Well, I know a little bit because I remember standing on a street corner and talking to you about this one time. And I would actually, would you kick us off here? Because you made a long distance move to get started.
Me?
No. Sorry, Raul.
Okay, I was like, what? No.
Oh, coming from Texas? Yeah, I mean, I graduated from theater school in Boston and moved back to Texas for a few years because I was a playwright and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I sort of got disillusioned with trying to tell my stories and being in one of these cultural institutions that kind of beats it out of you. And I went to Texas for a while, and I was in Austin producing theater, and that's where I did my first camera work. I auditioned for a short film and I cast in the student film, and I was like, because I never thought I could be an actor. I thought I was going to be a playwright, and then that kind of, and then Austin got really small really quickly, as you can probably imagine, and that's when I was debating between New York and LA. I spent a little time in both, and and one day I was sitting in my car in Austin and in gridlock traffic, and I was like, I don't want to sit in traffic, I want to go. I'd rather read books in the subway, than sit in a fucking car So that was literally my decision for moving to New York. But I think I always had a fascination with New York. I think that started early on from just seeing New York. Some of my favorite plays and favorite movies, some of my favorite artists are from the city. So it just, coming up in the theater and all that, it just seemed like a place that I mythologized even before I got here.
I like Raul. I like this guy. New York is where it's at.
Raul, did you move at the right time, do you think? And did it always feel like that?
No, I always felt like I was trying to catch up. But at the same time, I don't like, yeah, I mean, what's the right time? I don't know. You sort of like grapple with that. Because the experiences I had before getting here sort of led me to really hone in on what I wanted and what I needed. And that just over the years has become more and more, finite, or not finite. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's just become more specific.
Yes.
I should say. Yeah. Yeah.
With me, in 2016, I came to LA to visit some friends, and when I landed in LA, I think this was like June, July. I was like, "Oh, this weather is nice. This weather is," because I've been in New York all my life, and we have the seasons, but I don't like cold weather. I like hot weather. But in the summer, New York gets humid and very sticky, so LA is very dry. So after like a month, I was like, I told my mom, I say, hey, I think I'm going to stay in LA for a little longer. And I told my reps that. And so my reps were like, oh, okay, that's cool. we'll set you up with some meetings and get you some auditions and whatnot. So I said, cool. And by August, I had moved. I had like got all my stuff out here, found a studio. And when it comes to timing, it's not like I timed this, because I never expected to move to LA. I've always wanted to stay in New York for my whole career, move and just go to LA for work and then come right back. But I think the credits that I had up until then that I've, had on my resume, and like just, the reel that I had, I think it just was a good starting point in LA, as opposed to not having anything and coming to LA and then being like, oh, it's another actor that's green and that's in LA to do this thing. Right. So like I had a very pretty strong resume. So I was like, I don't feel like I'm going to have to start from the bottom again. And if anything, I can just always go back, because that's my city. I have relationships and I'm good. Like I'm Gucci, but so when I got to LA, when I moved here in August, I had just let go of my manager in the East Coast, because they only worked in the East Coast. So, it was cool. It was going to happen. And I got with Authentic, which is my current management, and shit just started popping. Can I curse? I'm sorry.
Of course you can.
Oh, okay. Shit just started popping. Like it was crazy. Like I didn't expect to be so busy off the bat in LA. I did not expect that. I was like, oh, it's going to take some time for me to settle. People don't know me, And the next thing you know, I'm like in these studio lots. I'm like, whoa, this is where you have auditions. Like,
you're a star.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, oh, am I in Paramount? This is Paramount? Like 20th
The
century.
kid from Queens. Yeah.
I know.
I hear the music in the background and everything. Like, let's do this TV show. Let's just like,
Yeah.
let's do it. I love it.
Yeah.
Dude, it doesn't matter how many times you work at the Paramount lot. Every time you go through that gate, you're just like, oh, it's the reason why it's the most photographed in all the movies, because it's the prettiest gate.
The gate, it's just that they got it's crazy. And in New York, we're used to going to brownstone buildings or like just buildings, and
the longest slowest elevators in the universe. Always the casting studios in New York have the slowest elevators in all the city.
I think it's actually written in their leases that they super slow.
Yeah.
Works. Yeah.
So it really messes with you. So that's interesting, Jake. So you moved with representation. Raul, you didn't move with representation, or you did?
No.
You were
He's like, nah.
Right. Do that. Nana, how about you? Because you went to school in New York City.
No, I went to school. I went to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and then I came here afterwards. And all my friends, because Penn has Wharton and all that fancy stuff, so all my friends went into finance, and I was their poor actor friend. And I did, I worked in nightlife. I worked in a wine store. I worked in an illegal gambling den. I babysat. I did everything. And it was pretty awful. And I couldn't get arrested. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get anything. And I only really got, and so LA was never an option for me. One, because I went to boarding school and I didn't have a driver's license, and driving kind of terrifies me. I still don't have a driver's license. And so, and then part two is, I had a friend who made the move, and he was like, yeah, like I just made sure I had like about $10,000 saved up. And I was like, how? The idea of having like a lump sum of $10,000 that I could just like, facilitate my move across the country was like to a place where I can't drive and I'm not mobile. I was like, this is not, it's just, so I've limited myself in that way. I probably could have taken driver's ed and made the leap to LA, but it just never really appealed to me. I don't really like the people, so.
Tell us how you really feel.
Be real, girl.
That's the New York coming out. That's the New York.
Yeah.
I love it. Janina, how about you?
I was in Chicago, and ABC came and did like a talent diversity thing in Chicago, which was hilarious because in Chicago, the casting directors were like, as if we don't know who these people are. You're coming into our little town and gonna tell us who our people are. It was pretty funny.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just like, all of this is useless. Like this, we know. Thank you. And it was pretty funny. But then what it actually did was, and they didn't say to us, when you come to LA, you have allies. It was like, they didn't do any of that. But there was a pack of us from that. I don't even know if they ever did it again. But the pack of us from that year, we all, of course, knew each other. We were like coming up in the theater scene. We all suddenly felt like, oh, maybe LA might hire us. Like maybe we have a spot. And we all kind of moved within a year of each other. At the same time, I was up for the lead of a Broadway show. Wow. And it was down to the final callbacks, and it was me and, 2 other girls. And I got acute bronchitis and laryngitis and should not have gotten on that plane. Should not have. I remember the work session. I almost passed out. I was very ill. And so, in those kinds of things, it's like, you can't just be the best bitch there. You got to at least be the best version of yourself in that moment. Didn't happen. It was like a fateful moment where I was on the stage and looked up at the theater and just was like, this ain't it, kid. You don't suck, but this ain't it, And then, and then I moved to LA. And I managed to get a manager before I moved. So I did have a manager. And then, but I was also making music kind of. So the thing that's always been the case for me is, acting can be so anti-entrepreneurial, right? You're waiting for somebody to write a role for you that you can then hopefully prove that you are the right person for, and hopefully the famous version of you is not available so you can get the job. like if Rosario Dawson is unavailable, then maybe I have a shot. You know what I mean? That's what it's always been.
That's so real, fucking John Cho. So
it's
real.
real. It's real.
You can't play every role.
When they were coming up, they had someone else too. That's what it is. By the way, I'm now lucky enough to walk into rooms sometimes and the waiting room will go, shit. And I'm like, oh my God, do I get to finally be, I'm that bitch. Am I that bitch? In a very little slice, very small slice of the industry. But my point of saying this thing is it's everywhere on every level, right? And now that I'm producing, directing, and writing, I understand, I sort of always have, but I see even more so now when you're talking to a studio, that they have to pick the famous person because of the data behind the person to show that the thing is going to get the money of the da-da-da so that they can give you $1 million to make your thing. There's a million reasons why the system is fucked. So, but I digress.
This is why you should be an actor, right?
Yeah. So the way that I got through the downtime was I was just creative in other ways, right? So I was still making music, and then if it wasn't music, then I was making websites for people, and if it wasn't that, then I was helping somebody build a company, and if it wasn't that, then I just have too much energy and have to get it out of my body in some way or I'll crack. So I've just always been doing all these other things. Now here I am in a moment where I can take all the 10,000 hours in various areas, the Malcolm Gladwellian 10,000 hours, and apply them to very legitimate parts of my career now. So basically volunteering for other people has helped me build very reliable and monetizable skills now.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So Nana, you touched on it too, and I feel so seen by what you said of I did this, I did that. I moved to Spain to go to music school when I was 21. And I taught English because that's if you show up as an American anywhere, they're like, you're going to teach English. And I'm like, I am not qualified to teach English, but I will try.
Yep.
And I tour guided for English bachelor parties. which is way worse than it sounds. Don't worry, that's a movie that's happening at some point, I promise.
I'm ready.
Yeah, let me know if you need some bachelors.
I have some things to say about British men, you guys. But I feel really seen by that. And Janina, I think you bring up something that's so important, which is like, you got to stay busy in the in-between or you will go crazy. Raul and Jake, I'd like to hear you guys talk a little bit about too, like, how did you keep yourself going? What were the things that you were doing to stay busy in between as you were coming up?
I was doing a lot of writing. I wrote a lot of plays, and I thought of myself primarily as a playwright when I moved to New York. So I loved just sitting down and working on scripts. At the time, I fancied myself a writer. So yeah, I was, I think, creatively, and then just doing anything and everything, like just being a nuisance until people just, like, you just stick around. Like, I'm a member of Labyrinth Theater Company, and I think the reason is because I just hung around. Like, I never wanted to be a member. I was like a piece of chewing gum. I just like stuck around, and eventually they made me a member, and they produced my play, and I've worked, I got my equity card with Lab, like all this, like, so
I will say it's definitely a game of attrition. And if you can just kind of hang in there and hang around for long enough, I feel like things start to happen. Like I feel you on that. Like, I went back into my email and looked at some of the emails that I sent, like casting directors back in the day. Like when I was like, like, they are straight embarrassing. Like, and just the things I would do in the hijinks of like trying to get a job. But yes, Raul, props to like tenacity. I think that's an important.
Oh my God, yo, I feel so like seen and heard right now, because that's too real. Like, remember postcards? I would send postcards for what you give me any reason, I'm gonna send you a postcard, like any reason in my life. But
those things matter though, because the thing is that, like, you don't know when it's gonna matter. You know, like, but two things are very real here. One of them's going to pay off. Two, you better be ready. You better be ready. Because sure, you can send embarrassing emails now, but the reason that you are where you are right now is because you showed up and that casting director found you to be reliable. You have to always put yourself in these people's shoes. In the end, they have to do a job. They don't have time, and they have to make sure that they get hired again too. They have careers, right? So like people have there's this strange thick veil over Hollywood. But the truth is, it's like a bunch of really creative people with big hearts that want to see everybody do well, that have to keep their job as well. So if you are a casting director, think about it. You've got this person says one line, which it was my first gig. Like, do you want fries with that? You know what I mean? In LA. And by the way, I got cut out, like, that was like my first gig in Los Angeles. And, but like, I got brought in, and they saw a bunch, like, that's when the postcard matters, right? So like, there's a bunch of postcards in the room, on a desk, and not even the casting agent, probably the casting agent's assistant who's interning or something is going through them, going, oh, great. Okay. So this person might be right for this 2-word line, and then they'll bring you in. So now you have a shot, and you, like, in that moment, is when you get to own the room, and you get to show them, you don't have to be bigger than the part or anything. You are just ready. You're just ready, and you're reliable. So even if you're not right for that, because only one of you is going to get it, that casting director knows, I can bring that person in again because they're going to be reliable. They're not going to waste time. They're not going to be awkward, and they're going to embarrass
me. And they're not going to embarrass me to my employer when they come.
That's the thing. Yeah,
and I
like,
think,
literally today. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go. You can finish.
Okay, literally today, I'm consulting on this such a cool project. I can't talk about it. I probably won't be able to talk about it for 5 years because they signed my life away.
What is
it? Speaking of my employers, but we're talking about which casting director we're going to hire. So I'm saying to them, this is the stuff, right? I'm saying to them, okay, I know that I brought up 2 names, and I said, I know that this casting director has their short list of the people that they will bring in are A-list. And those A-list people love her because she gave them their first shot. So they will pick up the phone and say, what is this? All right, I'll look at it. For real, as opposed to them just like into the nebula of the WME, CAA. Like, you don't know if you're sending a project to a fancy A-list actor if they'll even hear about it. Yeah. So it's really about casting and their relationships, right? Yeah. So I was like, she has this list of like the top tier and who calls next, right? Then this other casting director, this is all for like people of color, by the way, because I was like, you're calling me to tell you how to reach my community. Let me tell you who to call, right? So, so then the other person I said was, she is excellent at telling you who the diamonds in the rough are. Ooh. I know because she's done it for me. So the people who aren't even calling next, they are 3 steps away, but man, they're fire. They'll enter the screen and you'll lean in and be like, who is that? She knows who all those people are. So which one do you want?
Both. Get both of them. Fuck it.
Get both. That's how I said. That's what I said. Have this one secure your leads and then fill out everybody else, because that's going to be a second phase anyway with all of these people. And that is what we're talking about here, right? That's what I mean. You need to be reliable so you can get on their short list and they will bring you up. That's what it is. So you know what? Send a postcard.
Hold on. Let me go find one. But real quick, just to answer Emily's question real quick. Yeah. So the in-betweens were really interesting because I, even now, I consider myself really just an actor. I took sketch class recently at UCB, and I suggest or recommend any actor to take sketch classes. It's great. But so in New York, I was really just acting. I didn't want to direct. I didn't want to write. I didn't want to produce. I just wanted to act, right? That's all I wanted to do. But I would just I took a lot of different, not a lot, but acting classes that my friends highly recommended. And I would just try to see which techniques were for me, what weren't, or what how certain teachers were in their classes and how they taught. And I learned a lot from those classes. I took improv, and I really highly recommend actors to take improv. At least the beginners classes. I took that at UCB in New York. That was intense as fuck, but I learned a lot. I did a lot of workshops for new plays with Barefoot and Labyrinth. And I tried to get in and the Actor Studio too. So I would just like circulate between Poetic Theater Company, Labyrinth, Actor Studio, and Barefoot, and just kind of like, just if they needed actors to read or give notes or anything and do these stage readings, I'd be like, yo, I'm available. Like I love this and I want to do it. And that really helped to stay creative, but also just to have hope. Like, this is something that you love doing, even though there's nothing to show for it, right? There's this awesome story that Jenna Fisher told in an interview a while back. And she said, she went to a family dinner and she's the only actor there. And they were asking her, how's the acting thing going? This is before The Office. And she said, I auditioned for something and I had a callback. And it was really great. And they were like, and that was my best news for the month. And they were like, that's it? Like, you didn't get hired? And she was like, you don't understand. That's a big thing, So I think I was just trying to, collaborate with a lot of artists. And it's easier in New York than in LA, which is another reason why I miss New York so much. But, it was hard because a part of me was very result oriented in terms of how I viewed the art and career, and you can't be that. You have to be reaction oriented. You have to, it's.
But also, you were an athlete. There's like actual data. Yes. It's like an actual meritocracy. Like, that's not. Yeah, that's not like a thing.
You're coming from something that's like very objective, and there is. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you're a point guard. Can you shoot this well? Can you pass this well? Oh, okay, and you can do this. We might. I don't want to say cast you, pick you for the team, right? At a tryout. So I'm coming from that. But the thing that I learned from athletics that transferred over to acting really well was just repetition is key. You know, no matter what, you can't wing things. You have to work on your craft, whatever that is.
My favorite tweet that, Lady Gaga, who I love, tweeted this thing years ago that was like, every song on this album, I sang until it became a part of me. And then I recorded it. And it was a retweet with a quote from Josh Groban, who said, hey, we have something in common. I like practicing also. Like, yeah, right. Man, like these are no, it's not a meritocracy, but these are tangible skills. They are muscles, and that's why these classes help you gain different kinds of muscle groups, you know?
So it's interesting because I've had the advantage of being on the producers or director side of the table with both Raul and Jake, and having, you know, Jake came kind of late in the auditions and we had seen a lot of people. And what we were doing for Fuck Yes in that case was we were actually auditioning like a bunch of actors with the 3 directors who were doing several episodes. And then we had a card table afterwards being like, okay, these 2 together. No, but I want that one. Like, you know, like just trying to put the best pairs for the stories that we wanted to tell. And with both Raul and Jake, like I have actually witnessed the experience of like, oh, it's different when they come in the room. It's different what they choose to bring. The choices that they make are really specific and interesting. The preparation is clearly there. Like I remember, Raul, you had to give a brutal speech as a part of the audition for references. And this is what, 12 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely.
I still remember that performance. Right? So I think...
Can we see it right now?
We didn't tape it.
No, like...
I have that script laying around.
Can you go?
That's Jose Rivera. That's when you have great writing, you know?
Facts.
You know?
Facts.
Yeah. So I want to ask about 2 separate things on this track. And one is, because you're circling around it now, right? Like, be ready. What does that mean? Like, what are you doing? I can't ask you what you're doing differently because how can you know what anyone else is doing? But like when you're going to go into the room, and Janina, the phrase that you used was own that room. What is that experience for you? Like, Nana, how do you, when you're about to go walk into the room, what is the thing you do?
I think if it's a really big audition, I think my issue is I'm often combating nerves. And so what can help is like making sure I do some sort of exercise in the morning, like being able to like work out and just kind of like get that like jittery energy out so I can kind of come out on the other side of it a little bit calmer, a little bit more, you know, so I think that's really helpful for me. Yep. I think knowing I like to look at the material before I leave, but I don't like to be in the sides like that day because I should have done that work prior. So I have it all down, and it's just about like just refamiliarizing myself with it before I go in. But I'm not like sitting in the waiting room, like, you know, trying to get those, you know, like that. Just I'm a Virgo. I need to be prepared. I can't fuck with this, like, you know. Raul knows. Virgo's in the house.
Virgos.
And so like, you know, that energy, I need to just like be like, I just noticed that and that's where I know a lot of actors are always saying that they do their best work when they don't give a shit. And so it's about trying to figure out how to fabricate that feeling, but actually, well, you still give a shit, you know, but trying to fabricate the feeling of not.
Yeah. Like you gave a shit when you were preparing, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, I did it. Yep, I did the thing.
Facts.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's a big part of feeling good when you walk in the room.
I love that.
I just to touch on what Nana said, it really helped me a lot in the past 2 years when I practiced detachment from the project and the character, no matter how much I think that character is me, because there's 100 other actors that are like, oh, that's me too. Like I fit it. This should go to me. But while still putting in the work to prep, to make interesting choices, like you said. And also when it comes to choices, this is something that I ask myself a lot, or other actors who come to work with me. It's like, this seems to be your first choice. What will be the second choice? What will be the third choice? You know, like sometimes you don't have to go with the first instinctual choice that comes up, because that could be easy. That could be the one that everyone goes with, right? So like, what are the second and third choices, right? Like for anything. And just going in there and really thinking about, okay, booking this job, sure, it's nice, and you know, it'll give you a lot of things, but maybe it'll take a lot of pressure off of you if you say, hey, I want to book the room. I want to, like Janina said, show the casting directors that, oh, you're reliable, you're good, and you're not a weirdo. Just don't be a weirdo. Like, that's half the battle. Really, truly don't, you know, a casting associate that my friend knows, she was just asking, like, what can we do as actors to help ourselves, you know, as actors? And she was like, if you're not weird and you don't make the shit awkward for us, that's half the battle. And I was like,
yeah, like, can you be a professional person who we can trust will show up on time, do the thing, and be a professional?
Not embarrass us and not embarrass
us. Be reliable.
You can't walk into a room and need 10 minutes of like weird silent time to prep, or like weird breathing exercises in the corner. You actually can't do that work in the casting room. And I feel like I have witnessed actors do that because they think it makes them, it shows how special they are and how dedicated they are to the craft.
Like, that's a performance.
It's so awkward to be in the room with. Like, I've actually been on the other side of the table being like, say the lines. Just say can somebody say a line? And if you have a singing partner, what are you doing to that person?
Can I just also throw in there that just in the people who are, I mean, COVID has upset all of this, but in terms of people who are early career, I have found, to what you're saying, that being in the room while these things happen, being a reader for casting directors can be so
illuminating.
Okay, Janina knows what I'm talking about. Janina knows what I'm talking about. So
that's the first thing I did.
Right.
When I came here.
You're literally a fly on the wall, because nobody's asking you for your opinion. You're just spitting the words back to the person who's coming in. You can see that people who book the job, they enter with that energy in the room. Yes. And, you know, and I've always said this, is like, when I sit down in a theater, like, and the lights go down and the show starts, like, as an audience member, I've noticed that, like, when I have the best time, the most transformative experience is when I feel like I am in the steady hands of a professional. Like, this person is like playing my shit like a fiddle. Like, they just know how to, you know, how to execute, how to deliver. Like, I think there's so much of that in terms of the professionalism.
Okay, two things I've never heard before are like some of my favorite things I've ever heard about acting. And one is what Jake said about what's the second choice, what's the third choice. And this thing about being in the steady hands of a professional, like, I can't think as a producer or as a director of anything I would want more than that feeling.
Yeah. Like, put yourself in this is my whole thing. Put yourself in the shoes of the person that you hope will hire you. If you are a writer, you have probably been working on this. Let's talk about feature scripts. You have probably been working on this thing for at least 5 years. Now you finally get to make it, and you are in pre-production, and you are finding the people who are going to say your words and embody the people that you have been dreaming about for years. Wouldn't you hope that, one, they would respect your baby, two, be excited about your baby, and three, hold your baby and not fucking drop your baby, right? Like, so there's two things here. Also, I want to just say, we are talking about two things: art and industry. Every single person here continues to train, right, in their art form, so they can use it in an industry. In that industry, that's kind of what we're talking about here, is the industry stuff. Like, I consider myself a very blue collar actor, where I'm just like, what do you need? I got you, you know? And I think that, but I'm also like, alternately, as an artist, a very snobby artist. So like, in the industry, I'm super blue collar, but in my head as an artist, I'm actually like a snob, y'all. So if we had an art conversation right now, I feel like I'd be a very different person. But the thing is, my attitude about the industry side of things has really protected my artist heart and soul, which is really the most important part of it, you know? But like, yeah,
quickly, can I jump in though about the idea about, I love this idea because I've said this before, because I initially wanted to go to grad school. And then after not getting in and being encouraged to apply next year, I realized that like, no, this is a trade. When you say you're a blue collar actor, like this is actually a trade. It's like we are plumbers. So should I, and I know that this is going to be very controversial because obviously there are a lot of institutions that make a lot of money off of this, but it's like, do I want the plumber that read a lot of books on plumbing, or do I want the plumber that has the experience? I think the most valuable thing that we can do instead of sitting around and theorizing about things is actually do them. And so I think that blue collarness, Janina, is really, that's a service to your craft. It's just like, not being precious about things, getting in there, getting dirty, you know, and
it demystifies things, you know, and like it becomes much less about you, like, because being an actor in this industry can be a really siloing experience, really lonely experience for an art form that requires more than one person often, unless you're just doing monologues your entire career. That's weird. So you have to find ways through it. And that is a perspective that has helped me immensely.
And also, one of the reasons I love New York, I did not find this in LA, so it could exist. But one of the things that I love about New York is that people often get together to like read plays. And I love that. Like speaking to the silo idea is that it can be very lonely. And I think what's great about New York is that a lot of people will be like, I got chips, I got beer, come to my house, we're going to read A Winter's Tale, or we're going to read, you know, August Osage County, or we're going to read whatever. And just like this idea of gathering and scratching that itch and feeling like an actor, even though maybe nobody's at that moment asking you to do any acting.
Yeah, that's all over. That's all over LA as well. That happens all the time. But you're mostly reading people's screenplays.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. And that's different. And that's different because you're in service of that person's specific thing. I'm talking about the idea of fellowshipping around a piece of work, not in service to the writer, but just to be actors and gather and scratch that itch.
Mm-hmm. Me and my friends, we did that in the beginning of quarantine. And they were mostly in LA, where we said, hey, let's just get a group together, get on Zoom and just read plays, you know, preferably plays that are probably POC or some just, you know, like Rajiv Joseph. I love his plays. And like, we were like, yo, like, have you guys read this? And you know, some of them were like, yes, some of them no. And I was like, I think his plays are worth reading, you know, because a lot of the people that were on the Zoom were Asian American. And we did that. And it just, you know, one of them said, hey, this is great, but also it just helps build morale, you know, during these crazy times. And we stopped for a little bit because it just got crazy, and so we just took a break. But in New York, this isn't even it's like it's very common. In LA, it's like Janina said, we're reading someone's screenplay or like a pilot or something. But maybe there could be a culture of that in LA. Who knows?
There definitely there is. You just got to find it.
I think you have to create it. Like I lived in LA, and like
that's a good point.
I was acting when I was in New York, and I came to LA only after I had started Seed&Spark. So I had a very different experience landing in LA. But my experience generally in the two cities is New York has a certain pace that you can get swept up in, and all you have to do is like kind of hook your finger in, and you're like off. LA has a really chill vibe, right? It vibrates on a very low frequency. And if you don't generate the energy, it's not going to give it to you. Like it's not going to hand it to you on a silver platter. So like it sells itself to you as like the land of opportunity and where all the stuff is happening. And you get there and you're like, nothing is happening.
I feel like in LA, in LA, you got to really make an effort to see people like, and people say they're going to go out, and then 9 times out of 10, people will cancel on you. Whereas in New York, everyone wants to get out of their apartment. So if someone comes to New York, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go see this person because they're in New York. Whereas LA, it's like everyone cancels always.
One of my
no.
favorite things, Raul, is like when you came to LA from New York and you were like, let's have dinner. I'm like, I will drive to the West Side because I know Raul's not going to cancel on me when I'm on. Do you know what I mean? Like I will drive anywhere to see him because I know he's not going to cancel on me while I am sitting in traffic.
See,
So flaky, LA.
you people
So
were
flaky.
giving me side eye when I was shading on LA at the beginning of this conversation.
Well, the only thing I'm gonna say is I moved here from Chicago and like felt like I was like this Chicago theater actor and was like very sort of that little bit of confidence actually got me like pretty far, I think, like in my nerves. But I looked at this shit like if my parents could move here from India, I can make a life for myself in Los Angeles. And I put in the work and I found my people. And there's the LA that I live in is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Are you all first gen Americans?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm saying is, LA as a whole can be daunting, but like suck it up, find your people is kind of how I feel. And like I can tell you from my own experience, every person who walks through this door is extraordinary.
Yeah. You know what? We actually share a really good friend in Vinny Chibber. Vinny is one of my best friends. And Vinny and you have done these salons for South Asian creatives. And he spent a lot of time in New York. And like you said, I pick and choose who are in my circle. Everyone else is an acquaintance, but like everyone that comes through this door is an actor's actor, artist.
Yep.
Artist. And like, they are not about the shits. You know, we're not about that. We're trying to do the work and still be about the industry. Sure. Play the game, That's down the third.
Industry versus art.
Exactly. And you know, I gotta say, like, I've never seen a roundtable with all POC actors just gathered, especially first gen Americans, you know? So Emily, that's awesome. I gotta give you credit for that.
For sure.
I don't know if Emily realized it. She
I didn't. So like,
like 5 seconds ago.
I know enough about you all generally, but I would never assume you were first gen. I know that Raul is, but no, I'm just learning this now, and I think it's interesting that you have a real symmetry in your approach, all of you.
I don't think that's arbitrary.
No,
I think
don't
that's
either.
absolutely because we have evidence of what it takes to make it in our parents and in our own experiences. And Nana, I think we share Margot as well. Margot is like us too. Like we know that this requires an inner fire and a protection of one's soul, right? And that it's like Hamilton, immigrants, we get it done. You know what I mean? Like it's just.
And I think resilience, like these words that I've been throwing around, like attrition and tenacity. And I think resilience is like very much an immigrant trait because like, no matter how many times you get knocked down, you just got to keep soldiering on. You just got to keep kind of throwing yourself at it until something sticks. So that's been really, that's been like a very much a hallmark of my career thus far. And I think it was kind of scary. I mean, I don't think many people have this problem, but it was kind of scary for me after motivating myself for so long and then finally hooking up with like good representation great representation in case they're watching, they're amazing. Great representation, about 4 years ago, and then really seeing everything pop off from there. It was kind of hard to release, because I had been the steward of my career for so long. I had been self-motivating. Like I was the gas, I was the car, I was the whole kit and caboodle. And then all of a sudden to kind of like hand this baby, hand over to somebody else for them to kind of take it to the next level was a little terrifying, I think. And a real nuisance the first couple months that we were working together. I was like, so what are we doing? What are we, like what's happening next? Because I had been the one to do that. And I think that absolutely stems from just being the child of West African immigrants who hustled.
Yeah.
God, this breaks up like we need another hour. This like breaks open a whole other
it really does.
Incredible side of this. And so one of the things I'm gonna make an assertion here. I'm the only white person in the group, and maybe this is unfair of me to say, but like my understanding is like, you don't really get a choice about whether or not to be an advocate for your community or use your platform for your community. Like, you get thrust into that role as like, if somebody's choosing Jake between you and John Cho, like that says something about how the world views who can go in what role, right? And you're contending with that along with just the difficulty of being in this industry as well. Can you guys talk a little bit just about like, you have these platforms now, people are following you, they're very like, they're interested in you, and they've come both through who you are and your identity and the work that you've done. Raul, I don't have a single gay male friend who is not in love with you, not one. Like, you know that, right? Like, and that's something that like you now have to navigate as both being the person that you are in the world, and then the role that you were gifted to embody, and that you did so well that it like built this loyal following. Like, talk a little bit about just like that feeling, how you deal with it, what the responsibility is.
I mean, I have to contextualize because as a straight dude in a prominent gay show, I knew that there was a certain kind of responsibility. And this is, I mean, the show that you're talking about we shot that in 2013 and the next couple of years. And that was, I almost walked away from acting when that role came along, when that project came along. I'd been in New York for 10 years. I was on the verge of sort of giving up, and that pilot came around and they couldn't find who they needed. I had already auditioned for it and they had passed on me, and then it came around like last minute, like they needed someone in San Francisco like a week later, and there I was shooting the pilot, and the show gets picked up, and then they wrote to the character, and it became this, this really wonderful experience as an actor. And then it's like, I mean, the role is kind of, aside from my own thing, the role is very beloved, I think, because there's a certain dignity to this guy, and
Sweetie.
What's that?
He was a sweetie.
Yeah, he's a sweetie, but he also stands up for himself, and he asserts some. There's a lot. He's complex, and I think there was a lot of people that identified with him in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I think from the get-go, I grew up, like I said, in this really small town, South Texas, first generation Mexican American. Where we're from in Texas is actually, I think, maybe different in that I grew up 10 minutes from where my family's from in Mexico. So we grew up going back and forth a lot, and Texas used to be Mexico. There's a lot of like, anyway, my family was from this very specific part of the country, and I knew when I got out, and when I went to Boston, when I went to New York, that in a sense I was representing, and that I had this community that I was speaking to. So even as a playwright, though, I always found that I wrote about what I knew. I wrote about Texas. I wrote about being Mexican American. I wrote about being first generation. And I knew that, I mean, so already I even before I was full-time acting or thought of myself as primarily an actor, I was already kind of investigating who I was and where I came from. And I knew that there was a responsibility to that.
Can you talk really quickly just about, so there's the piece where you're writing based on your own experience, and then there's a piece where you're handed a part that is not you at all. And just, can you talk about that adjustment and how you attack that?
Writing a play is like creating your own world and being like the god of these characters, and that's fun and that's beautiful. I love that experience. I've never been in anything that I've written outside of college because I had to, because there were no brown people at Boston University in the 90s. But I don't like being in my own plays. I like to watch other actors and be, but as an actor, I think that it sort of taps into being a little kid and imagination, and it taps into these like primal things that I was already doing before I was even writing plays or before I even stepped on stage as an actor. And it was like cultivating my imagination and investigating a character that's outside of myself and learning about the world through the craft, right? Like, to me, because I'm from such a small town and I wanted to get out and I wanted to see the world, the theater and storytelling became a way to learn about the world and not my own experience. So I think that's the amazing thing about playing a character like the one in Looking, who is so different than me in a lot of ways.
Guys, I'm so sorry, but I have another Zoom after this that starts at 5. I've got to hop
She's
off.
busy.
I'm very sorry. If I could reschedule it, I would. But thank you guys so much. This was amazing.
It's so nice to meet you, Nana.
Yeah,
Yeah, for real.
Great to see you.
Thank you. I mean, this is the world we're in now, right? Is like we're just scheduled to the hilt. We don't even have breaks anymore because we're just Zoom. I just sit in this fucking room all day long and like go from one to the other. I just wanted to give you guys a chance to reflect on that before we close out, because I think this is really, these questions of identity are foisted upon actors of color much more so than their white counterparts, or like really entirely on them and not on their white counterparts at all, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about how you interact with that, and also like once you have a platform, what happens? You know, what is it? What is the responsibility you bear? Jake, you've been on the cover of was it The Advocate?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a huge platform.
Yeah.
You know, like that's not a small thing, and that is not related necessarily to your craft. Like you didn't grow up and go to school about how to be like a cultural influencer. Right.
You know, I have so many thoughts on this, and it reminds me of a tweet that this Black woman tweeted, and she said, you know, instead of asking POC actors in interviews about representation, ask us about the craft and save those questions for the white male actor. Like, how about that? Let's try that. And you know, that's real. It's so real because we're actors too, right? Yeah. So if you're going to interview us about something that we're in or coming out with or currently, you know, performing, let's talk about that, the craft, instead of just being like, you know, so as a Asian actor in this show, the representation, that's cool, but we've answered all those questions already. If not me, someone else. Yeah, Google it. Find that. You can Google it. So, but at the same time, if that's something that you know you want to answer and use your platform to address, of course, you know, like Raul said, we have a responsibility, right? You know, and it just like Nina Simone said this awesome thing where, you know, as artists, you're supposed to reflect the times that you are in. Mm-hmm. And I always say, like, artists give voice to people who don't have a voice, who don't have the privilege of being actors or artists, because it is a privilege to be an artist, to be an actor, especially a working actor who has a platform in a day of social media, in an age of social media. So if that's your thing and you want to bring awareness to issues that you're really passionate about, do it. And if that's not your thing, don't force it, because then it becomes virtue signaling, which I'm guilty of in the past. And now it's like, do I really mean what I say? And do I act behind the screen to back up what I say? And, you know, but I'm also aware that I don't want to use my platform to question or disrespect other people's existence, especially who are marginalized. You know, that's not my job. That's not my business. If I'm not going to support, I'm going to mind my business. You know, because everyone's going through their own struggles. Like, I don't know the struggle that Janina went through, especially being a woman of color, that Raul went through, you know, being a Latino growing up in Texas. I don't know that. So, like, I can't speak on that. You know, that's not my lane. You know, we gotta know how to stay in our lanes. But coming back to platforms, yeah, it's great. It's always great when I see people, you know, supporting not just their own communities, but other communities, because it's very empowering to see that. You know, like, for example, Gabrielle Union, she stands up for other communities, not just hers. You know, and it's just really empowering. And when I see someone like Gabrielle Union speak out for other people, and I'm just like, damn, yo, we have someone like that on our side too. You know what, I can do this. Like, we can do this together, you know. We can fight whatever system that we're fighting, and it's very encouraging to see that.
The intersection is very powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I want this conversation to go on for so much longer, and I also have to respect the time that you have given us.
Yeah, I have to go.
I really, really appreciate it. You all are phenomenal. We're like blessed to be in this generation of actors, from like just some of the most like delicious performances on all size screens. Like, we're just very lucky to have you, and very lucky that you could be
I just
here.
want to say one last actory thing, because I know that I can tell in the comments, like, people are coming as actors, especially like people who are moving here, deciding to move, etc. We talked about art and industry as two different things. I just want to ask of you in your development, if you can set a metric for what you believe your own success is that is based on art, not the industry. That is something that I hope you do. You can have two separate things. You can also be like, yeah, I'm trying to get $1 million paycheck. That's fine also, but see them as two different things, and really, really value what your visualized, defined thing is that is success to you in your art. Just put a lot of weight in that, because it will help you keep yourself safe and inspired. That's all I have to say. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that's like, now we're done. Anything after that. Raul, Jake, Janina, thank you 1 million. I will let you guys drop off, and I will just give my little parting speech to this crowd. But thank you so much for your time and your work. And
thank you.
You guys
also,
so much.
So nice to meet you guys.
I just want to say, if Variety and THR is watching this, you see this roundtable, mostly POC. We like to see that more often.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be really helpful.
Not one token POC. Come on now.
I'll also say to Variety and THR, this is not hard.
It's not hard.
Not at all. Not at all.
We all got time.
That's right.
We all got time. Yes.
Everybody got time right now. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Take care. I just want to thank you all so much for joining us today. These sessions are provided completely for free, and our panelists also volunteer to be here. They are giving away their time because they care about this community. If you loved this and you have a couple of bucks to spare, we will put a link in. You can help support Seed&Spark's educational programming so that we can always provide these events for free upfront. And if all you have to invest today was the time that you gave to yourself, that is enough. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you for our next creative sustainability session. You can check out what's coming up at seedandspark.com/events. And I'm going to go spend some time thinking about all those amazing gems that were dropped today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.